The flash of 1,000 suns, the roar of a collapsing world. In mere seconds, the course of human history changed forever. What drove humanity to unleash such devastating power? How did this moment reshape our understanding of war and peace? Today, we uncover the real story behind the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a tale that continues to echo through time, challenging our notions of morality, science, and the very future of our species. By the end, you'll grasp insights few truly understand about this pivotal moment. Are you ready to confront the realities that forged our nuclear age? Historical context. The dawn of the nuclear age didn't arrive suddenly in August 1945. Its roots stretch back to the early 20th century, when scientists first began to unravel the mysteries of the atom. As World War II engulfed the globe, these theoretical musings transformed into a race against time and against Nazi Germany. Enter the Manhattan Project, a top-secret endeavor that would forever alter the course of human history. Led by brilliant minds like J. Robert Oppenheimer and overseen by the stern General Leslie Groves, this massive scientific undertaking brought together the finest physicists, chemists, and engineers from across the Allied nations. In the deserts of New Mexico, on military bases, and in secret laboratories, these men and women worked tirelessly to harness the power of nuclear fission. Their goal? To create a weapon so powerful it could end the war in one swift stroke. On July 16, 1945, their efforts culminated in the Trinity test. As the pre-dawn sky lit up with the intensity of 1,000 suns, those present knew they had unleashed something beyond their wildest imaginations. Oppenheimer, struck by the awesome power before him, recalled a line from Hindu scripture, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." But even as the dust settled in New Mexico, the war raged on in the Pacific. Japan, despite facing imminent defeat, refused to surrender. The island nation's leaders, bound by a code of honor that valued death over capitulation, prepared their people for a final, desperate stand. President Harry S. Truman, newly ascended to office following Franklin D. Roosevelt's death, faced an agonizing decision. Should he authorize a full-scale invasion of the Japanese mainland, potentially costing millions of lives? Or should he use this terrible new weapon to force a quick end to the war? As debates raged in Washington, the wheels of fate were already in motion. Two bombs, codenamed Little Boy and Fat Man, were being prepared for their fateful journey across the Pacific. The stage was set for a moment that would forever change the course of history, raising profound questions about the nature of warfare, the responsibilities of science, and the very future of humanity itself. The bombings. The morning of August 6, 1945, dawned clear and bright over Hiroshima. As the city's residents went about their daily routines, few could have imagined the apocalyptic scene that was about to unfold. High above, the B-29 bomber Enola Gay approached its target. At 8:15 a.m. local time, the bomb bay doors opened, releasing Little Boy, a uranium-based weapon that would forever change the face of warfare. 30 seconds later, the world witnessed the first use of an atomic bomb in combat. The explosion was unlike anything seen before. A blinding flash, brighter than the sun, seared the eyes of those who saw it. Within microseconds, a fireball expanded outward, reaching temperatures hotter than the surface of the sun. The shockwave that followed flattened buildings for miles around, turning the bustling city into a hellscape of twisted metal and shattered concrete. Survivors described a scene of unimaginable horror. Those closest to the hypocenter were vaporized instantly, leaving only shadows etched into walls and sidewalks. Others, less fortunate, suffered horrific burns and injuries. The intense heat ignited a firestorm that raged through the city, consuming everything in its path. As black rain, a toxic mixture of radioactive particles and debris, began to fall. The true scope of the devastation became clear. Hiroshima, a city of 350,000, had been effectively wiped off the map in a single moment. But the atomic nightmare wasn't over. Just 3 days later, on August 9th, a second B-29 took off from Tinian Island. Its target? The city of Kokura. However, cloud cover over the primary target forced a change of plans, and the bomber diverted to its secondary objective, Nagasaki. At 11:02 a.m., Fat Man, a plutonium implosion-type bomb even more powerful than its predecessor, detonated over the Urakami Valley. While Nagasaki's hilly terrain somewhat limited the bomb's destructive radius, the results were no less catastrophic. The city's industrial heart was obliterated, and tens of thousands of lives were snuffed out in an instant. In the span of just 3 days, 2 cities had been reduced to ash and rubble. The world had witnessed the awesome and terrible power of nuclear warfare, and nothing would ever be the same. The immediate toll was staggering. In Hiroshima, an estimated 80,000 people were killed instantly, with tens of thousands more succumbing to injuries and radiation sickness in the following days and weeks. Nagasaki saw around 40,000 immediate deaths, with the final toll climbing to over 70,000 by the end of 1945. But numbers alone cannot convey the true horror of these events. Each statistic represents a life cut short, a family torn apart, a future erased in the blink of an eye. As the mushroom clouds dissipated and the fires began to die down, the survivors, known as Hibakusha, emerged into a world forever changed. Their stories of loss, survival, and resilience would come to define the human experience in the atomic age. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki marked not just the end of World War II, but the beginning of a new era, one in which humanity gained the power to destroy itself many times over. The echoes of those 2 fateful days in August 1945 continue to reverberate through history, shaping our understanding of war, peace, and the awesome responsibilities that come with scientific progress. Immediate aftermath. As the dust settled over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, a new kind of hell emerged. The survivors, many bearing wounds unlike anything seen before, found themselves in a landscape of utter devastation. In Hiroshima, the destruction was near total. Of the city's 55 hospitals, only 3 remained standing. Those medical professionals who survived were overwhelmed by the sheer number of injured and the mysterious nature of their ailments. Burns, traumatic injuries, and the insidious effects of radiation sickness taxed the limited resources to their breaking point. Survivors recounted horrific scenes. I saw a woman with her eye hanging out of its socket. In her arms, she held a baby which was burned bright red all over its body, recalled Akiko Takakura, a 20-year-old bank clerk at the time of the bombing. The lack of basic necessities compounded the suffering. Clean water was scarce, with many sources contaminated by radioactive fallout. Food shortages quickly became critical. The destruction of transportation infrastructure made it difficult for outside aid to reach the stricken cities. In the days following the explosions, a haunting phenomenon known as black rain fell from the sky. This toxic precipitation, laden with radioactive particles and debris, contaminated everything it touched. Many survivors, desperate for water, drank from puddles or streams, unknowingly ingesting dangerous levels of radiation. The effects of radiation exposure manifested in brutal ways. Hair loss, nausea, and bleeding gums were common symptoms. But perhaps most disturbing were the cases where seemingly uninjured survivors suddenly fell ill and died days or weeks after the bombing, victims of acute radiation syndrome. In Nagasaki, while the city's topography had limited some of the bomb's effects, the situation was no less dire. The Urakami district, home to the largest Christian cathedral in East Asia, was obliterated. The city's industrial heart lay in ruins. Amidst this apocalyptic scene, acts of incredible heroism and compassion emerged. Dr. Takashi Nagai, despite being severely injured himself, worked tirelessly to treat survivors in Nagasaki. His dedication, even as he battled leukemia caused by radiation exposure, would inspire many in the years to come. The outside world was slow to grasp the full extent of the devastation. Censorship by both Japanese and American authorities initially limited the flow of information. It wasn't until independent journalists like Wilfred Burchett managed to reach the bombing sites that the true horror of atomic warfare began to be understood globally. One of the most poignant stories to emerge from this period is that of Sadako Sasaki. Just 2 years old at the time of the Hiroshima bombing, she seemed to have escaped unscathed. However, a decade later, she developed leukemia, a delayed effect of radiation exposure. During her illness, Sadako began folding paper cranes, inspired by a Japanese legend that promised a wish to anyone who folded 1,000. Though she passed away before reaching her goal, her story became a powerful symbol of the bombing's long-lasting impact on innocent lives. As the initial shock subsided, the survivors faced an uncertain future. Many had lost everything: homes, possessions, and loved ones. The invisible threat of radiation lingered, its long-term effects yet unknown. And beyond the physical destruction lay a profound psychological trauma that would haunt individuals and shape the collective consciousness of Japan for generations to come. The immediate aftermath of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was a time of unimaginable suffering, but also of remarkable human resilience. It set the stage for Japan's long journey of recovery and forced the world to confront the terrifying realities of the nuclear age. Japan's surrender. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, devastating as they were, did not immediately lead to Japan's surrender. The decision-making process within the Japanese government was complex, fraught with internal divisions and bound by notions of honor that made capitulation almost unthinkable. Even after Hiroshima, many military leaders argued for continuing the fight. They believed that by inflicting heavy casualties on an American invasion force, they could negotiate more favorable surrender terms. Some even doubted the reports of Hiroshima's destruction, unable to comprehend the scale of devastation from a single bomb. However, 2 key events tipped the scales. 1. The Soviet Union's declaration of war against Japan on August 8, 1945. This shattered any hope of using the Soviets as intermediaries for a negotiated peace. 2. The bombing of Nagasaki on August 9th, which demonstrated that Hiroshima was not a one-off event and that the Americans possessed more than one of these terrifying weapons. In this climate of mounting crisis, Emperor Hirohito took an unprecedented step. Traditionally, the emperor's role was largely ceremonial, with real power held by the military and civilian government. But faced with the prospect of national annihilation, Hirohito decided to intervene directly. On August 10th, the emperor convened the Supreme Council for the direction of the war. In a voice quavering with emotion, he stated, "I cannot bear to see my innocent people suffer any longer. Ending the war is the only way to restore world peace and to relieve the nation from the terrible distress with which it is burdened." This imperial intervention broke the deadlock within the government. On August 14th, Japan communicated its intention to surrender, accepting the terms of the Potsdam Declaration. The following day, August 15th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's recorded message announcing Japan's surrender was broadcast to the nation. For many Japanese citizens, it was the first time they had ever heard their emperor's voice. The emperor's language was notably indirect, never using the word surrender, but instead saying that Japan must endure the unendurable and suffer what is insufferable. The reaction among the Japanese people was mixed. Some felt immense relief that the war was finally over. Others, indoctrinated by years of propaganda about fighting to the last man, were shocked and devastated. There were even cases of military officers committing suicide rather than accepting defeat. In the days that followed, isolated incidents of resistance occurred. Some military units refused to lay down their arms. In Tokyo, a group of young officers attempted a coup to prevent the surrender, nearly succeeding in destroying the recording of the emperor's message before it could be broadcast. The formal surrender ceremony took place on September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. Foreign Minister Mamoru Shigemitsu and General Yoshijiro Umezu signed the instrument of surrender on behalf of the Japanese government and armed forces, respectively. General Douglas MacArthur signed as Supreme Commander for the Allied powers, marking the official end of World War II. As the signing concluded, MacArthur spoke words that resonated with hope for a peaceful future. "Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always." The surrender of Japan marked not just the end of the most destructive war in human history, but also the beginning of a new era. The use of atomic weapons had forever changed the nature of global conflict, ushering in the nuclear age with all its terrors and ethical dilemmas. For Japan, surrender meant the end of its imperial ambitions and the beginning of a long period of occupation and reconstruction. The nation would have to grapple not only with the physical rebuilding of its cities, but also with profound questions about its national identity, its relationship with its neighbors, and its place in the post-war world order. The decision to surrender, forced by the atomic bombings and the entry of the Soviet Union into the war, saved countless lives that would have been lost in a prolonged conflict or invasion of the Japanese mainland. However, it also left a legacy of trauma and ethical questioning that continues to shape discussions about war, peace, and nuclear weapons to this day. Long-term health effects. The devastating impact of the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki didn't end with Japan's surrender. For the survivors, known as hibakusha, the ordeal was far from over. They faced a lifetime of health challenges due to their exposure to radiation, challenges that would extend even to future generations. In the months and years following the bombings, survivors experienced a range of health issues. Those who received high doses of radiation suffered from what came to be known as atomic bomb disease. Symptoms included nausea, vomiting, fever, and in severe cases, death within days or weeks. As time passed, it became clear that hibakusha were at significantly higher risk for various types of cancer, particularly leukemia. The first wave of leukemia cases appeared about 2 years after the bombings and peaked 5 to 6 years later. Other cancers, such as thyroid, breast, lung, and stomach cancer, showed increased incidence rates in the decades that followed. Many survivors developed cataracts at unusually young ages due to radiation exposure. This unexpected consequence of the bombings highlighted the far-reaching effects of radiation on the human body. Studies have shown a higher incidence of heart disease and stroke among hibakusha. This revelation expanded our understanding of radiation's impact beyond its more well-known carcinogenic effects. Beyond the physical effects, many survivors struggled with severe psychological trauma, including post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, depression, and anxiety. The mental health consequences of surviving such a catastrophic event proved to be enduring and profound. The concept of Niju hibakusha, those who experienced both bombings, highlights the cruel twist of fate some survivors endured. Tsutomu Yamaguchi, perhaps the most well-known double hibakusha, survived the bombing in Hiroshima only to return to his hometown of Nagasaki in time for the second attack. His unique experience provided valuable, if tragic, insights into the long-term effects of radiation exposure. One of the most heartbreaking aspects of the bombing's aftermath was the impact on pregnant women and their unborn children. Those exposed to radiation in utero were at higher risk for birth defects, developmental issues, and health problems later in life. This phenomenon, known as in utero radiation exposure, became a focus of long-term studies on the effects of nuclear weapons. The Radiation Effects Research Foundation, RERF, established in 1975 as a joint Japan-US research organization, has been instrumental in studying the long-term health effects of atomic bomb radiation. Their findings have not only helped in treating hibakusha, but have also contributed significantly to our understanding of radiation's impact on human health. informing radiation protection standards worldwide. One of the most controversial and ethically challenging aspects of the aftermath was the treatment of hibakusha by Japanese society. Many survivors faced discrimination in marriage and employment due to fears about genetic effects and lingering radiation. This social stigma added another layer of suffering to their already heavy burden. The health effects weren't limited to those directly exposed to the blasts. Subsequent generations of hibakusha have shown increased rates of certain health issues, raising complex questions about the intergenerational effects of radiation exposure. While the genetic impact remains a subject of ongoing research, the psychological effects on the children and grandchildren of survivors are well documented. The experiences of the hibakusha have been crucial in shaping our understanding of radiation's long-term effects on human health. Their stories have become powerful testimonies in the global dialogue about nuclear weapons and have played a significant role in movements for nuclear disarmament. As time passes and the number of living hibakusha dwindles, there's an urgent effort to document their experiences and ensure that their stories are not forgotten. Organizations like the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum and the Nagasaki Atomic Bomb Museum work tirelessly to preserve these narratives for future generations. The long-term health effects of the atomic bombings serve as a stark reminder of the lasting impact of nuclear weapons. They underscore the reality that the consequences of such attacks extend far beyond the immediate destruction, affecting individuals, families, and communities for generations to come. Global implications. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki sent shockwaves far beyond Japan's borders, fundamentally altering the global political landscape and ushering in a new era of international relations. The world had witnessed the devastating potential of nuclear weapons, and this knowledge would shape geopolitics for decades to come. In the immediate aftermath of World War II, the United States enjoyed a brief monopoly on nuclear weapons. This position of unparalleled military superiority influenced American foreign policy and its approach to emerging global challenges. However, this advantage was short-lived. On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb, codenamed First Lightning. This event marked the beginning of the nuclear arms race, a key component of the Cold War that would dominate international relations for the next 4 decades. As both superpowers raced to build ever more powerful weapons, the concept of mutually assured destruction, MAD, emerged as a cornerstone of strategic thinking. The idea that any nuclear exchange would result in the annihilation of both sides served as a deterrent against direct conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union. The nuclear age also gave rise to new forms of diplomacy and international cooperation. The United Nations Atomic Energy Commission was established in 1946 with the goal of ensuring the use of atomic energy for peaceful purposes. Later, the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, was founded in 1957 to promote the safe, secure, and peaceful use of nuclear technologies. The threat of nuclear war cast a long shadow over global affairs, influencing everything from proxy conflicts in developing nations to space exploration. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 brought the world to the brink of nuclear war, highlighting the terrifying reality of the new global order. As more nations developed nuclear capabilities, non-proliferation became a key concern. The Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, which entered into force in 1970, aimed to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and weapons technology, promote cooperation in the peaceful uses of nuclear energy, and further the goal of achieving nuclear disarmament. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki also had a profound impact on scientific ethics and the relationship between science, government, and military. Many scientists who had worked on the Manhattan Project, including J. Robert Oppenheimer, became vocal advocates for international control of atomic energy and nuclear disarmament. In the realm of popular culture, the specter of nuclear war gave rise to new genres in literature, film, and art. Works like On the Beach, Dr. Strangelove, and The Day After reflected societal anxieties about the nuclear threat and helped shape public perception of atomic weapons. The events of August 1945 continue to influence global politics and security discussions to this day. As new nuclear powers emerge and technologies evolve, the lessons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain as relevant as ever, serving as a stark reminder of the awesome and terrible power humanity now wields. Ethical debates. The decision to use atomic bombs against Japan ignited a firestorm of ethical debates that continue to rage today, more than 7 decades later. This controversy touches on fundamental questions about the nature of warfare, the value of human life, and the responsibilities of nations in times of conflict. At the heart of the debate lies a central question: was the use of atomic weapons justified? Supporters of the decision argue that it saved lives by averting a bloody invasion of Japan. They point to estimates suggesting that such an invasion could have cost millions of lives, both American and Japanese. President Truman himself maintained that the bomb saved millions of lives by bringing the war to a swift conclusion. However, critics contend that Japan was already on the brink of surrender, and that the bombings were unnecessary or even constituted a war crime against humanity. They argue that diplomatic alternatives, such as allowing Japan to retain its emperor, could have ended the war without resorting to such devastating weapons. Some historians suggest that the real motivation behind the bombings was to demonstrate American military might to the Soviet Union, effectively firing the opening salvo of the Cold War. The targeting of civilian populations raises particularly thorny ethical questions. While Hiroshima and Nagasaki had military significance, the vast majority of casualties were civilians. This indiscriminate destruction challenges traditional notions of just war theory, which emphasizes the principle of discrimination between combatants and non-combatants. The long-term effects of radiation exposure add another layer to the ethical dilemma. The suffering inflicted on survivors and their descendants raises questions about the morality of using weapons with such far-reaching and unpredictable consequences. The role of scientists in developing these weapons has also been a subject of intense ethical scrutiny. Many of the physicists involved in the Manhattan Project, including Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard, later expressed deep regret for their part in creating such destructive technology. This has led to ongoing discussions about the ethical responsibilities of scientists, particularly when their work has potential military applications. The bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki also forced a reconsideration of the concept of proportionality in warfare. Can any military objective justify such massive and indiscriminate destruction? This question continues to inform debates about modern warfare and the use of powerful conventional weapons. In the decades since 1945, the ethical issues surrounding nuclear weapons have evolved. The doctrine of mutually assured destruction raised new moral quandaries about the ethics of deterrence. Is it moral to threaten the annihilation of millions as a means of preventing war? These debates are not merely academic. They continue to influence policy decisions, shape public opinion, and inform international efforts towards nuclear disarmament. The experiences of Hiroshima and Nagasaki serve as a powerful reminder of the moral weight of decisions involving nuclear weapons. As we grapple with these complex ethical questions, it's crucial to remember the human cost at the center of these debates. The testimonies of Hibakusha, the survivors of the bombings, provide a sobering perspective on the real-world implications of these abstract moral discussions. Ultimately, the ethical debates surrounding Hiroshima and Nagasaki challenge us to confront difficult questions about the limits of military power, the value we place on human life, and our collective responsibility to prevent such devastation from ever occurring again. Legacy and lessons. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki left an indelible mark on human consciousness, forever altering our understanding of warfare, technology, and the very future of our species. Their legacy continues to shape global politics, scientific research, and cultural attitudes towards nuclear weapons. Perhaps the most immediate and enduring legacy is the peace movement that emerged in the wake of these attacks. The cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki themselves have become powerful symbols of peace and nuclear disarmament. Each year, thousands gather at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park to remember the victims and renew calls for a world free of nuclear weapons. The Hibakusha, survivors of the atomic bombings, have played a crucial role in this movement. Their first-hand accounts of the horrors of nuclear warfare have served as a potent reminder of what's at stake. Many have dedicated their lives to sharing their stories, traveling the world to advocate for disarmament and peace education. In the realm of international relations, the bombings sparked a global dialogue about the dangers of nuclear proliferation. The Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, NPT, while not perfect, represents a concerted effort by the international community to prevent the spread of nuclear weapons and promote disarmament. The events of August 1945 also had a profound impact on scientific ethics. Many scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project, horrified by the destructive power they had helped unleash, became vocal advocates for the responsible use of scientific knowledge. This led to increased scrutiny of the relationship between science, government, and military, influencing research ethics to this day. In popular culture, the image of the mushroom cloud became an iconic symbol of both technological achievement and potential annihilation. Literature, film, and art grappling with themes of nuclear war proliferated, reflecting societal anxieties and serving as a form of cultural processing of this new reality. The medical and scientific knowledge gained from studying the effects of radiation on survivors has had far-reaching implications. While the circumstances were tragic, this research has contributed significantly to our understanding of radiation's impact on human health, informing everything from cancer treatments to radiation safety standards. On a geopolitical level, the bombings marked the dawn of the nuclear age, fundamentally altering the nature of international conflict. The threat of mutually assured destruction has, paradoxically, served as a deterrent to large-scale war between major powers, though at the cost of living under the constant shadow of potential nuclear annihilation. The reconstruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki stands as a testament to human resilience. These cities, risen from the ashes, serve as living monuments to the possibility of renewal and the importance of working towards peace. Perhaps most importantly, the legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki continues to fuel ongoing debates about the ethics of warfare, the responsibilities of nations with advanced technologies, and the existential risks posed by weapons of mass destruction. These discussions are as relevant today as they were in 1945, particularly as we face new challenges like cyber warfare and the potential militarization of artificial intelligence. The lessons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remind us of the awesome power humanity now wields and the grave responsibility that comes with it. They challenge us to work tirelessly for peace, to approach scientific advancement with ethical consideration, and to never forget the human cost of war. As we move further into the 21st century, the events of August 1945 continue to serve as a stark warning and a call to action. They urge us to confront the existential threats we face as a species and to strive for a world where such devastation can never happen again. Post-war Japan and the nuclear present. The atomic bombings profoundly shaped Japan's national identity and foreign policy in the decades that followed. From the ashes of defeat, Japan embarked on a remarkable journey of reconstruction and transformation, emerging as an economic powerhouse with a unique position on nuclear issues. In the immediate aftermath of the war, Japan found itself under Allied occupation, led by American forces under General Douglas MacArthur. This period saw sweeping reforms, including the adoption of a new constitution. Article 9 of this constitution renounced war as a sovereign right of the nation, effectively committing Japan to pacifism. This commitment to peace, born from the trauma of the war and the atomic bombings, has remained a cornerstone of Japanese foreign policy. Japan's nuclear allergy, as it's often called, manifested in the three non-nuclear principles adopted in 1967: non-possession, non-production, and non-introduction of nuclear weapons. Despite being under the U.S. nuclear umbrella, Japan has consistently advocated for global nuclear disarmament. Economically, Japan experienced a remarkable recovery, often referred to as the economic miracle. By the 1980s, it had become the world's second-largest economy, a testament to the resilience and industriousness of its people. This economic resurgence was achieved while maintaining a staunchly anti-nuclear stance, proving that prosperity and pacifism could coexist. The trauma of the atomic bombings continues to influence Japanese culture, art, and literature. Works like Keiji Nakazawa's Barefoot Gen manga series and Studio Ghibli's Grave of the Fireflies ensure that younger generations never forget the horrors of nuclear war. These cultural products have played a significant role in shaping global perceptions of the bombings and their aftermath. In the realm of energy policy, Japan's relationship with nuclear power has been complex. Despite the historical trauma, Japan became a major user of nuclear energy for civilian purposes. However, the 2011 Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster reignited debates about nuclear safety and led to a significant shift in energy policy. On the global stage, Japan has taken a leading role in nuclear disarmament efforts. The country regularly submits resolutions to the United Nations, calling for the elimination of nuclear weapons. Hiroshima and Nagasaki have become centers for peace education, hosting numerous international conferences and events focused on disarmament. As we look to the present and future, the nuclear landscape continues to evolve. While the end of the Cold War reduced the immediate threat of large-scale nuclear war, new challenges have emerged. The proliferation of nuclear technology to more nations, the threat of nuclear terrorism, and the development of new types of nuclear weapons all pose significant risks. Recent years have seen both progress and setbacks in nuclear disarmament efforts. The Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, adopted by the UN General Assembly in 2017, marked a significant step towards a nuclear-free world. However, none of the existing nuclear powers have signed it, highlighting the ongoing challenges in achieving universal disarmament. The lessons of Hiroshima and Nagasaki remain as relevant as ever. As new generations come of age without direct memory of these events, it becomes increasingly important to preserve the stories of survivors and continue educating people about the devastating consequences of nuclear warfare. The hibakusha, now dwindling in number, continue their tireless efforts to share their experiences. Their message is clear: what happened to them must never happen again, to anyone, anywhere. Their testimony serves as a powerful reminder of the human cost of nuclear weapons and the urgent need for continued efforts towards disarmament. As we face an uncertain future, with evolving global tensions and technological advancements, the legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki challenges us to remain vigilant. It reminds us of the fragility of peace, the destructive potential of technology, and our shared responsibility to prevent such devastation from ever occurring again. The story of the atomic bombings is not just a tale of destruction, but also one of resilience, hope, and the enduring human spirit. It's a story that must continue to be told, learned from, and acted upon as we work towards a more peaceful and secure world for all. As we reflect on the devastating events of August 1945, we are confronted with powerful questions. How do we balance scientific progress with ethical responsibility? Can we ever justify the use of weapons with such catastrophic potential? What role do each of us play in preventing future nuclear conflicts? The legacy of Hiroshima and Nagasaki challenges us to be more than passive observers of history. It calls on us to be active participants in shaping a more peaceful world. What steps can you take, in your own life and community, to promote understanding and prevent conflict? If this journey through one of history's darkest chapters has impacted you, don't let that feeling fade. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How has this changed your perspective on nuclear issues? What topics would you like to explore next? Your engagement fuels our mission to uncover and share these crucial stories. If you found value in this video, please consider subscribing and supporting our work through donations. Every contribution helps us continue shedding light on the events that shape our world. Before we part, let's take a brief detour to ancient Japan, a land of samurai and shoguns. Did you know that long before the atomic age, Japan faced another existential threat? The Mongol invasions of the 13th century nearly overwhelmed the island nation, only to be thwarted by what the Japanese called the divine wind, or kamikaze. To dive deeper into this fascinating chapter of Japanese history, check out our video on the Mongol invasions, appearing on your screen now. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey through time. Remember, understanding our past is the first step towards creating a better future. Until next time, stay curious and stay engaged.